Some people grow up with love, with fairness, with support. I didn't. I was the daughter who was told to sacrifice. The sister who was expected to stay silent. The student who paid for everything, while my own family stole from me. They took my trust, my dreams, even my camera, all while smiling in my face and calling it love. But I learned something they never expected. You can push a person into the dark for years, but one day, she'll open her eyes. And when she does, she won't stay silent anymore. This is not just my story. It's a story for anyone who's ever felt forgotten, ignored, used. So, if you've ever felt invisible too, stay with me. Because by the end of this story, you'll see what happens when the quiet girl finally fights back. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more strength, more truth, and more fire waiting to be heard. Hi, my name is Emily Carter, and I'm 24 years old. If someone had told me that my 24th birthday would mark the day my entire life would be ripped apart, I would have laughed. Birthdays had never been a big deal in my family, but this one left scars I'm still learning to understand. What was supposed to be a quiet, unremarkable day turned into the spark that set years of buried resentment ablaze. Until that morning, I was just another struggling photography student in my final semester of college, balancing 2 part-time jobs, saving every spare dollar, and keeping my head down to avoid family drama. I lived at home because my parents insisted it would help me save money. In reality, it helped them save money on rent, on groceries, on bills, and gave them a live-in scapegoat whenever things went wrong. Still, I tried to stay focused. I had dreams. I wasn't just studying photography, I lived for it. After nearly a year of working long shifts at the diner and freelancing on weekends, I had finally managed to buy my dream DSLR, a Nikon D750, worth around $1,500. That camera wasn't just equipment, it was my identity. It held years of photos, my senior thesis portfolio, my client shoots, and above all, my confidence. It was proof that I was building something of my own, no matter how invisible that felt at home. I woke up early on my birthday, just like every other morning. My room was quiet, sun streaming faintly through the curtains. There were no decorations, no cards slipped under my door, no birthday breakfast. But I didn't expect one, not anymore. I took a deep breath, dressed in my usual work uniform, and reached for my camera, safely zipped in its protective case on the dresser. I never left the house without it. Heading downstairs, the smell of coffee hung in the air. My mom, Margaret Carter, was scrolling through her phone at the kitchen counter. "Happy birthday, Emily," she muttered, eyes still glued to the screen. "Thanks, Mom," I replied, waiting, hoping for even a flicker of warmth. But there was nothing. No card. No hug. Not even a smile. "Don't forget," she added without looking up, "you need to drive Ryan to his friend's house after your shift. He's got some group project thing." I nodded, my throat tight. Of course. Even on my birthday, I was a driver first and a daughter second. My camera sat on the counter beside my bag. Just seeing it calmed me. That black body and sturdy lens were more than metal and glass. They were hours of work, tired feet, calloused hands, and hope. I carefully zipped it inside my backpack and headed out to my morning shift at the Sunrise Diner. Despite the clatter of dishes and the buzz of customers, the Sunrise Diner felt more like home than home ever had. I'd been waitressing there for 2 years, and somehow the people there remembered things, like birthdays. "Happy birthday, called Tammy from the kitchen, waving a tray of freshly baked cupcakes. "You didn't think we'd forget, did you?" My manager Mike Lawson grinned as he handed me a small envelope. "It's a gift card to the photo store downtown. Just a little something for one of our hardest workers." I blinked fast to keep the tears in. The kindness felt so foreign, so undeserved. But it meant the world. Then came the text. It was during my afternoon break, sitting behind the diner with a paper cup of coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a birthday text from anyone. But it was from my dad, James Carter. "Sold your camera. Ryan needs a new phone. Be grateful we feed you." I stared at the screen, my vision swimming. My fingers froze. Surely I misread that. But before I could respond, Another text arrived. Also, you'll pay his tuition, $5,000. By Friday. My breath caught in my chest. My camera gone? That wasn't just my property. It was my future. My thesis. My job portfolio. My income. How could they? I tried calling. No answer. Hands trembling, I typed the only thing I could manage. No chance. The reply came instantly. Then get out. You're cut off. My world tilted. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the message behind it. I was never anything more than a source of labor and money. All because I refused to keep sacrificing myself for Ryan, the golden boy who had crashed 2 cars, dropped out of 3 programs, and was still coddled like a child. That text didn't just break me. It freed me. I finished my shift on autopilot, smiling, pouring coffee, pretending everything was normal. But inside, something had changed forever. I don't remember how I got through the rest of my shift that day. I took orders. I smiled. I refilled coffee cups. But inside, I was burning with betrayal, disbelief, and something else I couldn't quite name yet. Grief, maybe. Or finally clarity. My body moved through the motions, but my thoughts were racing. They sold my camera. The one I'd saved for a year to buy. The one holding my entire future. Job applications, portfolio, client projects, thesis research.
Gone. Just like that.
No warning. No discussion. No permission. All so that my brother Ryan could get another new phone, even though he'd broken the last one falling off a party boat 3 weeks ago. And now, they expected me to come up with $5,000 by Friday to pay for Ryan's latest college enrollment. His 4th program. His 3rd school. After dropping out of pre-law, then criminal justice, and most recently business, now he was, according to Dad, finally serious about communications. It didn't matter that I was a full-time student myself, or that I was already paying most of the household bills, or that I'd never asked them for anything. No, I was expected to give. Always give. Because Ryan had potential. Because I was so responsible. Because somehow, being the capable one meant being exploited. As I hung on my apron at the end of my shift, Mike Lawson gave me a concerned look. You okay, Emily? You seem a million miles away. I forced a smile. Just family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. But I wasn't sure that was true anymore. I walked out of the diner into the fading evening light, got into my car, a used Honda Civic I had bought myself, and just sat behind the wheel for a minute. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Dad. Don't try to come back. You made your choice. For once, he was right. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not because I was afraid, though I was a little, but because I knew that if I walked back into that house, I might let them twist everything again. Gaslight me.
Guilt me.
Convince me I was the problem. So instead, I drove to the only person I knew would understand. Zoe Brooks, my best friend since freshman year of high school. When she opened the door to her small apartment, one look at my face was enough. Oh, God, what did they do this time? I barely made it inside before I collapsed onto her couch, shaking. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and brought me tea, without asking questions. I handed her my phone and let her read the messages herself. Her eyes widened. They sold your camera? The one you worked all summer for? I nodded. And now they want you to pay for Ryan's tuition? Are they insane? It's always been like this, I whispered. But this time it broke something. Zoe sat beside me as I told her everything. The favoritism, the constant sacrifices, the endless, just be the bigger person speeches. You remember when I got that internship at Dawson Creative last year? I asked. The marketing agency, yeah. That was huge. My parents didn't come to the reception. Said they were too busy helping Ryan shop for his homecoming dance. They made me take the bus back. In the rain.
Zoe shook her head.
Unbelievable. It wasn't just that. It's always been like this. My first camera, Grandma Martha gave it to me when I was 16. Ryan borrowed it for a ski trip and came back with the lens cracked. No apology. No offer to fix it. They just told me not to be so dramatic. She stared at me, jaw clenched. You've been carrying this weight for so long, Emily. You don't have to anymore. I know, I said. I just don't know where to go from here. Yes, you do, she said quietly. And we're going to figure it out. Later that night, after I calmed down, Zoe and I sat at her kitchen table with notebooks and our laptops open. She had always been the pragmatic one, and I trusted her. You need to go back and get your things, she said. Clothes, documents, your backup hard drives, whatever you can. And if I were you, I'd document everything. Receipts, transfers, any proof you were paying bills. More than that, I said slowly, an idea forming. I need to make them face what they've done. Really face it. Zoe raised an eyebrow. Like how? I'm going to leave them a folder. A real one. Not just angry words. Facts. Numbers. Evidence. Are you sure? She asked. This could burn bridges permanently. I thought about it. About everything I'd lost. The camera. My work. My dignity. My voice. Some bridges need to be burned. I'm not doing this to hurt them, I said. I'm doing this to finally tell the truth. And this time, they wouldn't be able to ignore it. It was nearly midnight when I parked a block away from my parents' house. Engine off, headlights dimmed. I sat in the driver's seat for a full 2 minutes, just breathing. This wasn't home anymore, not really, but I still had a key, and I wasn't leaving without what was mine. Zoe had offered to come with me, but I told her no. I needed to do this alone. If nothing else, to prove to myself that I could. I crept across the driveway, careful not to trigger the motion lights, and quietly let myself in through the side door. The house was dark, silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. The smell was the same, a mix of Dad's aftershave and whatever air freshener Mom always sprayed in the hall. It used to feel familiar. Now it felt like a stranger's house. I climbed the stairs slowly, every creak beneath my feet echoing like thunder. My room was at the end of the hall, but the door was slightly ajar and light spilled out into the hallway. I froze. Then, heart pounding, I pushed it open. There he was, Ryan, standing in front of my mirror, wearing one of my favorite jackets, the vintage denim one I'd saved from a thrift shop in Chicago during a student conference trip. My drawers were open, clothes tossed everywhere. The closet door swung lazily, half my hangers bare.
Oh.
You're here, Ryan said casually, checking himself out in the mirror. I stared at him, stunned. What are you doing? He shrugged. Just seeing what fits. Dad said you're moving out anyway. My voice came out low and sharp. That doesn't mean my things are yours. Ryan turned to face me, clearly unbothered. Mom said I could take whatever I want. You don't need fancy clothes for waitressing. I clenched my fists. This wasn't about clothes. This was about years of entitlement, about always being second, about never being allowed to own anything, not space, not peace, not even privacy. Where's my camera? I asked, my voice flat. He gave a little smirk. Dad sold it to Walter next door. You know, for his daughter? She's starting college. He got like $1,200 for it. I nearly stumbled back. My $1,500 camera, with extra lenses, settings, editing presets, all gone for $1,200. Ryan, oblivious, added, my phone only cost $800, so I get to keep the difference. Sweet, right? I felt sick. Did it ever occur to anyone that the camera wasn't Dad's to sell? I asked, my voice rising. Ryan rolled his eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a camera. Just a camera. My jaw tightened. You still live here rent-free, Ryan. I don't. He laughed. That's what family does. You were helping. You always help. Not anymore, I said coldly, reaching under the bed and pulling out my small suitcase. I didn't argue further. There was no point. As Ryan continued trying on my clothes like he was at a shopping mall, I began packing what I could. Clothes. Important documents. Personal mementos. The photo I took with Grandma Martha at the state fair, my scholarship certificate, my signed photography books. I moved quickly, my brain now in logistics mode. I couldn't save everything, but I could save what mattered. As I packed, Ryan sat casually on the edge of my bed, swinging his legs like a bored child. "So, are you really not going to pay my tuition?" he asked. I zipped my bag.
No.
He laughed again. "Dad's gonna lose it. He already promised the school he'd pay by Friday." That made me pause. If he promised to pay, why did he tell me to do it? Ryan shrugged. Said something about teaching you a lesson. Also, I think they're having money problems. Mom had to return a bunch of stuff she ordered last week. Not sure why. Interesting. I filed the information away as I slid my suitcase to the door. Ryan stood and watched as I moved. "You're really leaving," he said, surprised now. "Like, for good?" I nodded. "You'll be back," he said, but it sounded more like a hope than a threat. I didn't answer. After Ryan left the room, thankfully taking some clothes and not much else, I went to my desk and pried up the loose floorboard underneath. From there, I pulled out a folder containing my emergency fund, $3,000 in cash, saved quietly over the years because my parents had a habit of borrowing from my bank account whenever they needed a little help. Next, I opened the box where I'd kept receipts, statements, and documents for years. I had been quietly tracking things for a long time: loans I gave them, bills I paid, things I bought for the house that were passed off as family expenses. Call it paranoia. Call it survival. I called it insurance. I sat cross-legged on my floor, now mostly empty, and started sorting. I made a checklist. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. Receipts for grocery runs, utility bills, repairs I paid for. Records of payments made for Ryan's old school applications. Notes showing how I was covering over 70% of the household expenses. Every paper made me angrier, but more focused. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was a case. By 2 a.m., I was at a 24-hour copy shop, scanning and printing and organizing everything into a professional folder. When I finally returned to the house, exhausted but steady, I placed that folder in the middle of the kitchen table. On top, I left a single note. The truth about who's been supporting whom. No more. Then I grabbed my bags, walked out the door, and didn't look back. The next morning, I was back at Zoe's apartment, lying awake on the pull-out couch, barely having slept. My head was buzzing from the adrenaline. Despite the exhaustion, my hands still felt electric from the night before, from finally fighting back. I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee when it started. My phone began vibrating on the nightstand.
Once. Twice.
Then continuously. I checked the screen. 27 missed calls. 43 text messages. 5 voicemails. They had found the folder. The first text was from Ryan at 7:14 a.m. "What did you do? Mom and Dad are freaking out." Then more, one after another. "Dad's face is purple. Mom's crying. They're saying you're suing us. Are you insane? Call home right now." My voicemails were a roller coaster of emotional tactics. Margaret Carter started out furious. "Brooke Elizabeth Carter, you come home this instant and explain yourself. This is slander." Then her tone changed. "Please, we need to talk about this as a family. Your father is very upset. There are explanations for everything in that folder." And finally, "Sweetheart, we love you. Please call us back. We can work this out." My father, James Carter, however, wasn't subtle. "You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" A gross misrepresentation, and you know it. But as the morning progressed, even his tone began to shift. "Emily, let's be reasonable. Let's talk. We can work something out about the camera. Just call me." It was from Grandma Martha Anderson. She never involved herself in drama. She was the type to quietly sip her tea while the storm passed. But this time her message was anything but neutral. "Emily, it's Grandma Martha. I just spoke to your father. I don't even have words. I had no idea things had gotten so bad. Your grandfather and I are coming to town tomorrow. Do not respond to your parents until we've had a chance to speak with you. Call me when you get this." I played the voicemail twice. Zoe, sitting at the kitchen counter, stared at me. She's never taken sides before, right? I nodded slowly, still stunned. Never. Maybe this time, she can't ignore it. Later that day, Zoe and I walked to the corner grocery store. The air was cold, but my body felt warm with a strange new energy. It wasn't exactly peace, but it was control. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting. I was choosing. That evening, Zoe's roommate Teresa returned from her clinical rotation and offered me her room for the weekend while she stayed with her parents. I accepted with quiet gratitude. Having a door that locked, a space that was mine even temporarily, felt like a luxury. At 6 p.m., the landline rang. It was Mike Lawson, my manager from the diner. "Hey, kiddo. Just checking in. You didn't show up for your shift and I got worried."
I'm so sorry, Mike.
Something came up. Family emergency. Zoe, overhearing, mouthed, "Tell him." I took a breath. I got kicked out. My parents sold my camera. I don't have all my stuff. I had to leave. There was silence on the other end. Then, "You take today off. But if you want extra shifts starting tomorrow, they're yours. And I can front you a bit of your paycheck early if that helps." His kindness hit me harder than I expected. I blinked back tears.
Thank you, Mike.
"I'll be there tomorrow." That evening, a few of my close friends stopped by Zoe's apartment. Jessica Chun brought her old laptop for me to use in the meantime. Nathan Tucker, a computer science major, offered to help me check if any of my data had backed up to the cloud. Melissa Gardner showed up with groceries and home-cooked meals for the week. "We've got your back," she said, hugging me tightly. "Whatever you need." I was overwhelmed by the support. After a lifetime of being told I was alone, suddenly I wasn't. Zoe leaned over and whispered, This is what family actually looks like." At 5 p.m. sharp, there was a knock. Zoe peeked through the peephole. "It's Brenda." I opened the door and stepped aside to let my aunt in. Brenda Morris didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I went to your parents' house," she said, setting her purse on the table. "It's chaos. Your father is raging. Your mother's been calling every relative in the state looking for money. And Ryan's having what I can only describe as an identity crisis." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Brenda smirked. "Apparently, learning your parents have been lying to you for years messes with your worldview." Then she grew serious. "But that's not why I'm here. I have something you need to know." She pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the table. "Ryan's tuition," she said. "It was paid. Weeks ago. From the trust fund your grandfather set up for both of you." My stomach dropped. "What trust fund?" Brenda's face softened. "Your grandfather set up equal trusts for you and Ryan when you were born. You were supposed to take control of yours when you turned 18. But your father, he convinced the trustees you weren't mature enough yet." My head spun. So there was money for my education. For everything. All this time. And he just kept it from me. Brenda nodded. "And used it to pay for Ryan's expenses after Ryan burned through his own." I stared at the folder, numb. All those shifts, all those loans, all those sacrifices. And they'd had money. My money. Brenda placed a gentle hand over mine. "Your grandmother is already on it. She's flying in with the family attorney. Your father's days of controlling those funds? They're over." By the time Grandma Martha and the lawyer arrived the next day, things had already begun to unravel. I was sitting at Brenda's kitchen table, a second cup of coffee in my hand, when the doorbell rang. Brenda opened the door, and in walked Martha Anderson, elegant and serious as always, followed closely by a tall man in a navy suit holding a briefcase. He introduced himself as Paul Green, family attorney. "Emily," Grandma said as she hugged me tightly. "You did the right thing." I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the problem. I felt like the proof. We sat around the table as I handed them copies of everything I had collected, unauthorized bank withdrawals totaling $7,930, receipts proving I paid an average of $1,450 per month toward household bills, loan records for Ryan's school supplies, car repair, and even my mom's dental surgery. The receipt, warranty, and insurance on my DSLR camera. Copies of Ryan's academic transcripts, 3 failed programs. A breakdown showing how my trust fund had been drained, $15,000 diverted to cover family expenses. Mr. Green examined the folder carefully. "This is extremely thorough," he said, flipping through the final section. "You even have annotated bank logs. I've seen attorneys prepare less compelling evidence than this." "I wanted to be sure," I replied. Martha nodded in approval. "Good. Because it's time we take this beyond family talks." That afternoon, Brenda received a call from one of our cousins in Dallas. Apparently, Margaret Carter had been reaching out to various family members with conflicting stories. To one, she said I'd run off with a boyfriend. To another, that I was mentally unstable. To a third, she claimed I was being manipulated by Brenda out of jealousy. But now that the folder had started circulating through the family email chain, thanks to a very fed-up Uncle Roy, people were starting to talk. And for once, they weren't taking my parents' side. Later that evening, I was sitting on the porch with Brenda when her son Tyler came running down the hallway. "Emily, they're here." I stood up. "They who?" He peeked through the window curtain. "Your parents. They're pulling into the driveway. Ryan's with them." My chest tightened. I didn't tell them I was here. They must have followed someone. Maybe the lawyer. Brenda stood, already grabbing her phone. "You don't have to see them," she said. "I can handle it." But something in me wanted to face them, this time, with strength. Before I could decide, the doorbell rang. Pounding followed. "Emily, come out here," my father's voice bellowed. "I'm not afraid of your folder. We need to talk like a family." Then Mom's voice. "Please, honey, just talk to us. Let's clear the air." I walked slowly to the door, but I didn't open it. Through the window, I saw them. James Carter, red-faced and pacing. Margaret, clutching her purse and looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. And Ryan, standing awkwardly behind them, his face unreadable. Then Brenda stepped outside, cool and composed. "You need to leave," she said sharply. My father snarled. "She's my daughter." Brenda didn't flinch. "She's also a legal adult. This is my home. You're trespassing. She's being poisoned against us." She's finally seeing the truth. When my dad tried to argue, Brenda dialed her phone in front of them, deliberately visibly. "5 minutes," she said. "Then the police arrive." They didn't wait that long. James hissed, "This isn't over, Emily," before stomping back to the car. Margaret looked back one last time. Her eyes met mine through the curtain. For a second, I thought I saw regret. But she said nothing. And then they were gone. Just as their car disappeared from view, a second car pulled in. It was Mr. Green, back from court. He stepped out, briefcase in hand, and approached the door. "Perfect timing," Brenda murmured. Paul handed me an envelope. "This is an official notice," he said. "An emergency hearing regarding the mismanagement of your trust fund has been scheduled for next week. You and your parents are both required to attend." I stared at the envelope, heart pounding. "This is really happening," I whispered. He nodded. "Yes. And you have the evidence, the witnesses, and the legal standing. We'll handle it together." That night, Brenda made pasta and garlic bread, and we sat down for a quiet dinner. Tyler put on music in the background, and for the first time in days, I felt normal. Not ignored. Not invisible. Not used. Just Emily. Later, as I stood brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were tired, but my posture was straight. I looked like someone who had stopped apologizing for her own worth. The week following the driveway confrontation felt like something out of a legal drama. While Brenda and Mr. Green prepared for the emergency hearing, I stayed focused on my daily routine, working extra shifts at the diner, reviewing my portfolio with Zoe's help, and reconnecting with the pieces of my life that had once felt stolen. Word of what was happening had spread through the extended family, and to my surprise, I began receiving messages of support. Aunt Cheryl emailed. "I always knew something was off. You were always the one holding things together, and they never gave you credit." Cousin Alex texted. "You're brave. Let us know if you need help testifying." For the first time, people were really seeing me. I was in the living room when Tyler peeked in. "He's here." I turned slowly.
Who?
Ryan. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and there he was. He looked different. Paler. Quieter. Not the smug, untouchable version of my brother I had grown up around. He clutched a small envelope in his hand. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded. We sat in the kitchen just like old times, but now everything felt foreign. "I didn't know," he said after a long silence. I said nothing. "I didn't know they were using your money. I didn't know the trust fund was supposed to be for you too." I stayed still. Let him talk. "They always told me you were happy to help. That you were mature. That you offered." "They told you that because they never wanted you to ask questions," I replied. He looked ashamed. "They said I needed the support. That you didn't. I guess. I never really questioned it." "You never had to," I said gently. "They protected you. Not me." He reached into the envelope and pulled out $800 in cash. "I didn't know the phone they gave me came from selling your camera," he said. "They told me it was a gift for doing well on my midterms." He placed the cash in front of me. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but it's a start." We talked for over an hour. For the first time in years, it wasn't about who got what, or who was better or worse. It was two siblings unraveling a web of manipulation that had used both of us, just in different ways. "I failed those programs," Ryan admitted. "Not because I didn't care, but because I never wanted them in the first place. Dad picked them. Said they were the only degrees that mattered." "What did you want to study?" He looked down. "Education. I wanted to teach. Elementary school." I stared at him, shocked.
That
I hadn't seen coming. "I was afraid to tell them," he said. "I thought they'd think I was weak, like they always said about you." The day of the emergency hearing came fast. We arrived at the courthouse in downtown Riverside, Missouri, neutral territory where the trust was managed, and I sat beside Mr. Green in the front row of the courtroom. My parents sat opposite. James looked furious. Margaret looked like a balloon slowly deflating. Ryan sat between them, tense but present. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Harper, listened attentively as Mr. Green presented my documentation. Item by item, the financial abuse was laid bare. Withdrawals marked temporary that were never returned. Loans borrowed from a minor's account. Trust fund movements disguised as family expenses. Clear favoritism in education funding, housing costs, and daily life burdens. By the end of the session, the courtroom was silent. Judge Harper leaned forward. "Based on the evidence presented and the breach of fiduciary duty established," she said, "the court hereby removes James Carter as trustee of both Emily Carter and Ryan Carter's educational trust accounts, effective immediately." I exhaled sharply. "The funds will be transferred to an independent financial manager," she continued. "Emily Carter will be reimbursed $12,000 in damages for unauthorized use of her trust, and all further access by either parent will be legally restricted." James stood. "This is outrageous. She's manipulating everyone." Judge Harper raised a hand. "Sir, sit down or you will be held in contempt." Margaret dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Ryan sat frozen. But me? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Not out of revenge, but out of relief. That night, I went back to Brenda's and opened a fresh journal. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "I am not invisible anymore." It wasn't just about the money. It was about being heard, being seen, being acknowledged. It was about reclaiming the years I'd lost to being quiet for the sake of keeping peace. The week after the court hearing was a strange mix of quiet and momentum. I wasn't waking up to chaos anymore. There were no urgent text messages demanding my sacrifice. No guilt. No manipulation. Instead, there was structure, stillness, and slowly, something even more surprising, hope. With the court ruling finalized, my trust fund was placed under professional management. A portion of the remaining balance was released to me, enough to clear all my student debt and give me space to breathe. The $12,000 in damages awarded by the court arrived in my new account, separate from anything my parents had access to. I met again with Amanda Harris, the financial advisor Grandma Martha had recommended. You're ahead of where most young adults are, she said, reviewing my accounts. You're debt-free, you have income, and you've already lived through a financial firestorm. Most people don't get that kind of wisdom until they're 40. She helped me set up a savings plan, start an emergency fund, and enroll in a long-term investment account. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was building. Back at the Sunrise Diner, I had resumed my part-time shifts, but something inside me had shifted. I no longer served customers with the weight of invisibility pressing on my chest. I had nothing to prove to anyone anymore. That confidence didn't go unnoticed. One evening, Mike Lawson waved me over to the back office. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," he said. "A friend of mine over at Callahan Marketing Group is looking for a photography intern." 2 days later, I walked into Callahan's sleek downtown office for my interview, dressed in secondhand business wear and carrying a reprinted portfolio I had salvaged from cloud backups. The interviewer, Allison Mercer, flipped through my work silently. "You created this while working 2 jobs?" she asked finally. "Yes," I replied. "And while paying 70% of my household bills. Without support." She blinked, then smiled. "That's exactly the kind of resilience we need here." I got the job. It started as a part-time assistant role, but came with a clear path to full-time employment after graduation and paid almost double what I made at the diner in half the hours. Finances and career were just one side of it. The other, messier part was emotional healing. I started weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Rachel Moore, a family systems therapist. During our second session, I asked the question that had haunted me the most. Why did they treat us so differently? Dr. Moore leaned forward. Because those roles serve their needs. She explained the golden child/scapegoat dynamic. How some parents unconsciously assign roles that let them avoid their own pain and deflect responsibility. "You weren't unloved," she said. "You were unprotected. And that's worse." The words broke something in me, but they also helped something new begin. I started to understand that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't fail. I had been failed. Surprisingly, Ryan began visiting more often. Each time, he brought more pieces of the puzzle, bits of truth he had uncovered from old emails, conversations he had overheard, stories he had believed that were slowly falling apart. "Did you know Dad invested in a real estate deal that flopped years ago?" he told me one night. "That's why they were always borrowing from your account." Another time, I found an email where Mom told Dad not to let us compare college bills. She said it would create tension. They wanted us to stay divided. I listened and forgave, not for their sake, but for mine. Ryan had his own story to unravel. I didn't excuse him, but I saw the cracks now, and I didn't need to carry his guilt along with mine. 2 weeks later, Grandma Martha made another life-changing offer. "I have an apartment in the city," she said over lunch. "Used to be your great-aunt's. Needs a little updating, but it's safe. Close to school. And yours if you want it." I blinked. "Grandma, I can't take that." "You can pay below market rent," she insisted. "Family discount. But yes, you can and you should." That apartment became my sanctuary. It wasn't big, but it had sunlight, hardwood floors, and windows that opened to the sound of real life. I painted the walls warm colors, hung my photography on the walls, and for the first time in years, felt like I belonged in a space. The day I moved in, the neighbor across the hall introduced himself. Adam Clark, graphic designer, mid-20s.
Witty. Kind.
He helped carry my boxes without being asked. "Moving is the worst," he said with a grin. "But new beginnings? They're worth it." We exchanged numbers just in case, and that somehow became daily messages, shared playlists, coffee runs. He never pushed, never asked too many questions, just showed up. And after everything I had been through, that kind of presence meant more than romance ever could. Graduation day arrived with the first warm winds of spring. The sun was bright, the sky a clear canvas of blue, and for the first time in my life, I walked across a stage not wondering who would be watching, but knowing exactly who was watching me. Zoe cheered from the third row, waving a ridiculous poster with my name and a giant camera doodled on it. Brenda sat beside her, dabbing her eyes. Grandma Martha had arrived early and somehow convinced the entire front row to move so she could get the best view. And then there was Adam, standing quietly at the back with a small bouquet of wildflowers and a smile that said, "You did it." When my name was called, Emily Carter, Bachelor of Arts in Visual Media and Storytelling, I walked with purpose. The crowd applauded, but my heart wasn't listening for noise. It was tuned to the silence I had once lived in, the quiet corners I had hidden in, the doubt I had carried in my bones for years. This wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a declaration. I am not what they said I was. There were hugs, laughter, photos in caps and gowns. As the crowd thinned, Ryan approached me, hands in his pockets, awkward as always. He offered a small box. Inside was a keychain, a tiny silver camera engraved with my initials. "I know it's not the one they sold," he said, "but I thought you should have something to carry." I nodded, emotions swelling in my throat. "Thank you," he smiled, then added, "You're stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for." My parents never showed. Not at graduation. Not in the weeks that followed. There were emails, excuses, backhanded apologies wrapped in self-pity. Margaret once wrote, "We were just trying to raise you right. You'll understand one day." James never wrote anything but one line. "You made your choice." Yes. Yes, I did. And I chose me. I didn't forgive them. Not because I was bitter, but because some doors aren't meant to be reopened. Some wounds aren't meant to be shared with the people who made them. Months passed. I moved into a full-time photography position at Callahan Marketing. I specialized in narrative portraits, telling real stories through lenses. I launched a small side business offering graduation photos for low-income students at discounted rates. Zoe helped design my logo. Adam helped build my website. Ryan started a night program in education. He'd call sometimes, asking for help with essays or moral support before tests. And slowly we became siblings. Not perfectly, but honestly. One autumn evening, Adam and I stood on the rooftop of my apartment building, watching the sunset. I held my camera, capturing golden light as it painted the city in fire and gold. He looked at me and asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I paused, then lowered the camera. "Sometimes," I said truthfully. "But if they had, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be this version of me." He smiled. "She's kind of amazing." I chuckled, resting my head on his shoulder. "She's still becoming," I whispered. "But yeah, I think she's going to be okay." If you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, too quiet, or too different, if you've ever carried a weight that wasn't yours, or held together a family that never noticed you were bleeding, let this be your reminder. You are not invisible. You are not weak. And your story is not over. Mine wasn't. And neither is yours. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles or gave you the courage to believe in yourself again, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone. And if you want to hear more powerful stories like this, stories of strength, survival, and redemption, make sure to leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Because here, every story has a voice. And every voice deserves to be heard.